tonight on the Cover One podcast, you are going to be checking out Aaron and I talking with Tej Seth of Sumer Sports. But first, our guys, Handsome Jack.
Broadcasting live to Bills Mafia worldwide with Greg Tompsett and Aaron Quinn.
Welcome to the NFL. Doesn't matter what's happened before today. Today's a brand new day. It's a brand new season.
Your number one podcast for objective Buffalo Bills coverage. No matter where you are, we got you covered.
Good evening and welcome to the Cover One Buffalo podcast. You are joining your host, Greg Tompsett, along with my partner in crime, Aaron Quinn. Aaron, how we doing?
Yo, Greg, I don't want to do preview show. I just want to watch that Miami game over and over and over and over again. Why do we have to move forward to the season? And I can't believe we're heading into week 5 already, dude.
It's October. October's weird. There's a lot of oddities about it, but yeah, I agree. I was a lot more motivated to watch that a second and a third time before getting ready. Luckily, I do like it when the schedule lines up where I can watch the next opponent's game live. So having the Jacksonville Atlanta game be the 9:30 game last week, I was able to watch it live. So
scouting that with the Toy Story
version. I did the Toy Story version at one point. I could only do for so long, then I had to switch over and watch it. So the funny part is, for anyone who didn't know about it and clicked over 20 minutes in, they had a way better experience because once they figured it out, it was decent. Yeah. But a ton of people quit because it was kind of rough to start.
Glitchy. Yeah,
a little glitchy to start. But anyway, so for tonight, we're kind of doing the same thing. Instead of going through our normal routines of just a Jaguars or opponent focused guest, we brought on a little more league-wide guest who obviously has some good information on the matchup here, but also can talk a little bit about the start for the Buffalo Bills. So without further ado, welcome Tej Seth of Sumer Sports. Tej, how we doing?
Great, guys. Yeah, thanks for having me. Really excited to be here. I think that you guys are coming off one of the bigger wins of the season so far, so Bills fans should be really excited, and I'm excited to talk about this next game as well.
Yeah, and can you just introduce yourself to folks? So I know we were talking a little offline. I was raving about the site. Can you just give a little bit of an introduction to who you are and what you guys are up to?
Mm-hmm. For sure. Yeah. So I work for a company called Sumer Sports. And so what Sumer Sports is we are a roster optimization company. So the business side works with a lot of NFL teams about taking your salary cap, your draft picks, all this information that you have on your team and using it to make your roster better. I'm on the consumer side for Sumer. So anything public facing that you'll see is something that my team is working on. So Aaron, like you mentioned, the website that we have, we try to put up a lot of data on there. We do podcasts that we do 5 a week called the Sumer Sports Show. And then I also write articles and send out some newsletters. So anything data focused that you see from us, hopefully either me or, some of my coworkers, Eric Eager, Parker Fleming, or Sean Syed have worked on. So, just be sure to check out all that stuff if that interests you.
So you guys will see that in the show description here. We've saved that there. And I know for the fans that have joined us before for discussions with, whether it's talking through some of the stuff that we have on from what used to be Football Outsiders, and now Aaron Chatz has taken over to FTN Fantasy. We lean into DVOA a lot. And as Aaron talked about, there's a lot of really intriguing things. So we're going to bring up some of the different metrics and analysis that Tej and the team have done over there at Sumer Sports, but it's taking the same idea of that analytical approach in reviewing how those things happen. So obviously it's a fun time to review the Buffalo Bills. So before we get into it, I know Tej, when I was talking with you and Sean and kind of getting ready for who was coming on the show, maybe share a little bit about the discussion you guys had going into that Miami game and how big of a deal it was. It was, we had people like Bill Simmons and Cousin Sal talking about it being the game of the year. And, so many eyeballs were on that game. Did your guys' metrics show them as two of the heavyweights really matching up with each other?
For sure. And I do think that it was one of the bigger games of the year, one of the more anticipated matchups. It felt like a crime that it was at 1 p.m. Eastern time. Should have been a night game, but it was a great game to watch at 1 o'clock, especially that first half. And the disagreement that Sean and I had, and I respect so much of what Sean does from a film watching perspective. But I think at the end of the day, like he knows so much about film. And I'm a big believer in preseason priors matter. And when you look at the Bills and their preseason prior compared to the Dolphins and what we thought about them preseason, we both thought of them as top teams in the AFC, but we saw the Bills as a true Super Bowl contender, one of the 3 or 4 best teams in the NFL. The Dolphins were in a tier below that. And so coming into this game, even though it looked like the Dolphins were playing better throughout the season, I think you looked at the spread of Bills -2.5, which is about meaning they're about a half a point or 1.5 points better on a neutral field. So the market thought that the Bills are better. And you also thought about what we thought about the Bills coming into the season, having the better quarterback in that matchup. And that's why I like the Bills in that game, even though Sean was more on the Dolphin side.
So with
Makes
those
sense.
big heavyweight matchups, and you talked about that Super Bowl contenders and in a bit of a different tier, the way sort of the NFL as a whole right now is looking from a data perspective, are you starting already here 4 weeks heading into October, starting to see a bit of a separation in those tiers of who are going to probably run away over the next month of contenders versus the middle class of the NFL? And sort of what is that separation of parity looking like right now for the teams? Is there any separation from the real contenders right now?
Mhm. Yeah, that's a great question. And I think that there's a tier 1 of 5 teams right now. From the AFC, it would be the Chiefs and the Bills. And then the NFC would be the 49ers, Eagles, and Cowboys. And then you would move on to the second tier where the Ravens and the Dolphins and the Chargers, the Lions, Seahawks, teams like that. That's where I think those other teams sit. But I really see there being the 5 true Super Bowl contenders here. And yeah, I mean,
I was going to say the playoff leverage one, they almost sit in exact tiers.
That
It's
order,
really funny the way
Yeah.
that they sit vertically. You can see where some of the separation is.
Exactly. Yeah. Like I think, and I even mentioned this in like the kind of article that I do every Friday morning that comes on our website where it's like, yeah, the Chiefs, 49ers, Bills, Eagles. And then since the Cowboys are second favorites in their division, but still like a really good NFC team, they kind of get bumped down there. But like those are the teams that I think have basically gotten as close as you can to like certifying that you're in the playoffs. And now it's about thinking like, what they're going to do with the next steps, like start preparing yourself for the playoffs. We saw the Bills be a little, I think, like emotionally exhausted, physically exhausted at the end of last season, especially with what everything happened injury wise in the DeMar Hamlin situation. So I think with another year of that experience here, the Bills can start to think about, all right, we're playing the long game to win a Super Bowl this year instead of just grinding out and making sure we win the division and make the playoffs.
Yeah, I think that's an interesting way to look at it, and hopefully being able to learn from some of those. So the probability leverage that we have on the screen here. Explain to fans a little bit what this shows each week as you go into the difference of what that winning or losing that matchup can do.
Yeah, so this is playoff probability leverage. We simulate the season 10,000 times every week. And so we're able to go into the simulation and look at if you do win the game that you're playing on Sunday, how often do you end up making the playoffs, which is those numbers in green there on the right side of the bars. And then if you lose the game that you're playing this weekend, what do your playoff probabilities look like with the red bar? So for the Bills specifically, they're already at like a 97% chance to make the playoffs. So win doesn't do a ton for them. They just go up to 98%. A loss would bump them down to 94%. But again, they would be in a really good spot. There's teams with a lot of leverage on the line this weekend. Like if
the Jaguars actually are a fair amount.
A lot to lose.
Right. Yeah. Like the Jaguars would, again, they're pretty big underdogs in this game, but if they do win, they go up to 55% chance to make the playoffs because it's not only getting an extra win, but it's also showing you can compete with some of the best teams in the NFL if they beat the Bills. So it's a dynamically updating simulation.
And for them, it'd be a third AFC loss to start the year, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah, tough.
Interesting.
Yeah, I like that. I like that presentation. It makes sense that you're starting to see a little bit of a pull away at this point.
Yeah. So some of those pieces, as we get into the matchup a little bit more, I know you shared one that we were really interested in. Help walk the fans through this a little bit, and we'll kind of use this as a template as we get into some of the matchups there. But this side by side, help explain a little bit about what this shows.
Yeah, so this is a game preview showing some advanced statistics that have shown to be predictive of game matchups. So if we start from the top here, we're looking at offensive EPA per play, your expected points added per play. So for those who don't know, expected points is basically a better way to measure your yards per play, because 3 yards gained on 3rd and 1 is a lot more important than 3 yards gained on 3rd and 13. So expected points adjust for that. It kind of measures how well you're doing to increase your scoring chances over an average team on each play. And then right below that is success rate, which is the rate at which you have positive EPA plays. So this doesn't get influenced as much by turnovers and explosive plays. This is just a binary. Either you had a successful play that moved you closer to scoring, or you didn't have that.
Real quick on success rate. So I've new to your site, use Sports Information Solutions quite a bit, and they have positive percentage. Are those the same, or are they calculated differently?
Right. Yeah. Positive percentage would be the exact same thing as success
all right.
rate.
Yep.
All right, and help.
Yeah.
So I'm going to double dip on that one. So I'm pretty comfortable with what I think I know success rate is on run plays. Success rate on run plays is half the distance on 1st or 2nd down and converting on 3rd and 4th. Is that correct?
That's the traditional definition of success rate.
So how do you guys do that, and what is your definition? Is it the same for pass plays?
Yeah, so the traditional way that people did success rate, I mean, like it really goes like back into like the earlier football days, like before 2000 and stuff, where people were using your definition that you mentioned there with success rate. The thing that it doesn't do as well in that case is the edge case situation. So red zone, it struggles a little bit more with, because the yards becomes a little bit harder to gain. And then end of half situations where you might gain a couple of yards each play that is defined as a success in the traditional way, but that's not necessarily increasing your chance of scoring if you only have a minute left in the half. So that's why we use expected points added. And if your expected points added is positive on that play, meaning you increase your chance of scoring, that's what we deem as a success.
Oh, okay. Okay. It's pretty clean.
I got one other question here. I see explosive play rate. I'm a fiend for toxic differential. I track it like crazy. What are you guys classifying as explosive plays, and how do you track it?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so explosive play rate is, I mean, there's a lot of definitions to it, like we just talked about. We do it as a 90th percentile play in terms of EPA or better. So if you're really hitting those top 10% plays, like the Bills do a lot, like that's what we deem as explosive plays.
Okay. Yep.
Very cool. So, and obviously, as we saw when we go in here, we like that there's a lot of very high rankings for the Bills.
I was going to say, for those listening on podcast form and not able to see the visual, green is good, and the Bills have quite a bit of green here on this chart.
Green. Almost all on offense, almost all green.
Yeah, I wasn't sure if we were going to let you on the show here, and then when you sent this, I saw all the green, and I said, okay, you know what, we can let him on.
So talk a little bit about what this is showing in a matchup, and like you said, some of the predictive elements as you get in here. Does this align to what you see as far as the with the point spread and the favorite that the Bills are right now? And is that lining up with where your data shows?
Mm-hmm. For sure. I do think the point spread is pretty fair for this game, because when you look at the Bills, they rank 3rd in EPA per play right now, behind the Dolphins and 49ers. So they have about the 3rd best offense in the league, which is around where I would put them on like a subjective ranking as well. But then you look at the Jaguars defense, they rank 5th in defensive EPA per play allowed this year, and they have the 3rd best run defense in the league. The good news for the Bills is the offense is EPA is more predictive than the defense's EPA in any specific matchup. So the offense has more control over the game. So even though the Jaguars defense has been playing well this year from a statistics standpoint, even from just like watching their defense play, I mean, they did well against the Chiefs. They did really well against the Falcons with the pick six and shutting down that passing game. So I think like the Jaguars defense has played pretty well this year, but they haven't faced an offense of the caliber that the Bills offense is.
And
In the on the one area that is not green for the Buffalo Bills is their explosive rate allowed. Um, that's a tough one for me to see because I just look at the Sean McDermott defense, and obviously there were some big plays, obviously in that Jets game, and they've let some big plays leak out even in the Commanders game. Is that what it is? Is some of those just crazy big plays that leak out in some of those games versus the average type of lack of explosive? Like Miami only got 4 actual explosive plays against the Bills in that game, but one of them was like a 50-yard play. Is
yeah,
that type of play
the
weighted so
Etienne
heavily?
55-yarder.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah, I think that's what it is so far. I mean, you
Okay.
look at some of the big runs that Brees Hall had on that opening Monday night game. You think about what Sam Howell was able to do, especially kind of in like a garbage time situation, but it still counted as the same in that Commanders Bills game, and then the Dolphins in the first half with the Devin Achane and Mozart runs and some of the passes like causing the Bills to let up more explosive plays. I think it's really interesting without Tre'Davious White. As I hope that he recovers smoothly here, is like I'm curious to see what happens with that number, because I think he's so good and such a crucial part in them being good at limiting explosives in years past. So if they've already started off on a little bit of a rocky start with that metric, like I hope that they're able to rebound without him, but I think it makes the road to doing that a little bit tougher.
In the explosive play stuff, do you guys use any metrics to like for on the defensive side where you have explosive rate allowed? Is there a metric to offset with turnovers created by the defense? Because wouldn't that sort of negate some of the teams being able to create explosives? You can negate that with creating explosive play in terms of turnovers on your own side. Do you have any of that kind of data?
Yeah, for sure. Actually, I'm glad that you brought that up. So if you look at here on EPA per play allowed versus success rate allowed, you can see that the Bills rank third in EPA per play allowed, but 14th in success rate. So we
Right.
think about success rate being that binary 1 or 0 outcome, while EPA is a very continuous scale that can fit in both turnovers and explosives allowed. So it shows that the Bills have actually been pretty good at generating these turnovers this year, while like the offenses have been able to stay on track a little bit better than the average team. Like the Bills defense has been really good at getting a lot of sacks. I think about that Commanders game where they had a ton of sacks, and then you think about the couple turnovers that they forced against Miami.
Well, if you think about it, it's funny. 2 of the examples in the explosive rate allowed, the 83-yarder from Brees Hall and then the 55-yarder for Devon Achane, those 2 combined resulted in 3 points.
Right.
Because of the one was a stop, they ended up holding him to a field goal, and the HN one was the Trey White interception in the end zone. And just having that combination was able to, that's where you're going to see the success rate allowed and the explosive rate allowed. Those factor in because those plays happen, and predictively, I think that's fair that, hey, allowing explosives isn't a good thing, no matter what, even if you make up for it later on. But ultimately, the EPA per play takes that into account because they had a sack, they had a turnover, they were able to prevent it from happening. So that's what shows the kind of end result in the EPA per play.
Exactly. Yeah. I mean, that's really well put. I think this Bills defense is going to do a lot of that this year, where they're able to get sacks in crucial situations. And like, this is not even with Von Miller, who like is one of the most clutch pass rushers of all time here, where he can come in and like, I feel like he was always getting third down sacks with the Broncos and that little stint with the Rams. Like, I think that could be even increased when he comes back as well.
So looking at this data, you're telling me this is predictive data. Normally, Greg, we put all of our guests on the spot to make some type of a prediction here. Should we do it as well this week? And so based on what the data is showing you and what you're looking at, can you give Bills Mafia here a prediction for what you're thinking this game's going to sort of look like, and then maybe a score prediction for us?
Yeah. I mean, I'm glad that we're talking about this. I think like with this being in London, it'll be a little weird to start off the game. It might be a little sloppy. But I do think that while it might be back and forth in the first half, maybe a little bit low scoring, the Bills will kind of take over in the second half, probably be leading by at least 1 score, maybe 2 scores towards the end of the game. And then I think like the Bills will end up winning this game 27-20.
I like it.
I like it. So again, I know you'd mentioned some of your articles that you do each week and some of the more public facing work over at Sumer Sports. Let the folks know what kind of things are coming up and what they can look for that you're able to have coming up next.
For sure. Yeah. I appreciate you you letting me do this here. So like this graphic that you're looking at here on the screen and a couple other game previews every week go into a Friday morning preview article I do on sumersports.com. And it also gets sent out in a newsletter we have that you can subscribe to if you come to the website and put in your email. There'll be a box that pops up when you do that. So, be on the lookout for all that stuff. And then I do a podcast every Tuesday with my friend Sean Syed called Stats and Scheme, where he approaches everything from a film watching standpoint. I approach everything from a numbers standpoint, and we kind of go back and forth on that, which is really fun.
That sounds awesome. Actually, you've got a fan in me. Like I said, I started playing around with the site. Really, I've been following you on Twitter here for a little bit, but really started playing around on the site this week in preparation for the show. And this is all stuff that I'm tracking weekly anyway for the show. But you guys put it in a user-friendly interface where not all sites are. Yeah, I got to go put it into my own spreadsheets and track it in this different sorts of ways and sort it in different sorts of ways. And I think it's very user-friendly. Provides a real interesting way to look at some of the matchups. So fans that are looking for that kind of data edge and looking at the matchup, it's a great resource.
So one last one here before we get you out of here. We talked about this pre-show. It's almost shocking that they put this good of a matchup over in London. It's funny. You explain a little bit about the watchability score and that you said this is actually one of the better ones that we've seen over there.
Right. Yeah. I mean, we were talking about how it's pretty rare that a Super Bowl contender gets sent to London. Like you often think of these kind of like groggy games. You wake up Sunday morning, turn it on, check it out while you're making breakfast. But like this is a game where I'm like Saturday night, I'm going to bed early, making sure I wake up for this game to get ready. So I have these watchability scores that go back all the way to 2011 that take into account what the spread is, what the game total is, and then the combined team strength. So you look at their ELO ratings that we have that we took from chess and how chess players are ranked, and then also the quarterback ability in the game. And so when you have a combination of a pretty high total at 48.5, two teams that are both top 12 in ELO, especially the Bills being top 3 in team strength, and then two good quarterbacks. I mean, Trevor Lawrence, Josh Allen, like these are two top 10 quarterbacks that are facing off against each other. I mean, I think Josh Allen is the QB2 in the NFL right now behind Mahomes, and then Trevor Lawrence is somewhere in that 5 to 8 range or 5 to 10 range, wherever you put him. So this ends up being the highest rated game in London that we've seen from 2011 in these watchability scores.
I love hearing that the Bills have high watchability rankings. And that, so would you say Josh Allen is highly watchable individual? Because I've always felt that way. The data's saying it, Greg. I mean, the data, numbers don't lie, right?
You can't argue with the data. You can't.
The thing with Josh Allen was like, even when he like wasn't playing at this level, you think about his first 2 years in the league, he was still so highly watchable because you never knew what was going to happen on any play. Like I think about that Texans playoff game the year before he broke out, where you guys probably remember
the data variance in that game was
exactly. Like when he just threw the ball behind himself, in overtime or the play before overtime, like that's just a hilarious play from Josh Allen.
Yeah, I've always said at a bare minimum, he's the most fun player to root for in the NFL because you're going to get entertainment. It's like a roller coaster.
Edge of your seat entertainment.
Little bit of anxiety, a little bit of excitement, and you never know what you're going to get.
Yeah, exactly. And like, the thing with Josh Allen is like, I think we're so lucky in this era of NFL right now, where it's like all the top quarterbacks are actually like good people that have had like a history of like of doing nice things for people, between Mahomes, Josh Allen, Justin Herbert, Joe Burrow, like all of these quarterbacks. And they just happen to be in your guys' AFC, but like they're all good people that are easy to root for. Yeah. I can answer this question from RJ.
Yeah, that'd be great.
Here. He says, I'm curious about the watchability score for last weekend. So we had a 9.86 watchability score out of 10 last weekend. Expected that to be a very watchable game. First half, I thought it was. Second half, obviously, it got away.
Yes, we had a 9.86.
Western New York had high ratings. on the game.
Yeah.
Well, like you said,
Yeah.
for the first quarter, it seemed like we were on pace for like a 56-49
I know.
kind of
Mhm.
crazy all-time shootout. It ended up, kind of falling off a bit there. But yeah, it remained
Yeah.
very watchable for us.
Yes, I might watch it back tonight. I don't know.
Yeah. Well, I've been loving Greg's tweets this week where he's going back and he's finding Dolphin fans that were overconfident.
Yeah.
And he's just like, he's dunking on them like that. VBS guy, Valley Sports, or whatever his name is. He's come at me so many times for Dolphin stuff. And he tweeted like, oh, we just have to wait for Josh Allen to do this. And it was a clip of Allen missing a pass. And Greg's like, yeah, he did do that against you guys, just in a different way. Like it's been hilarious to watch. Yeah.
I appreciate it. I do get
very
a little petty after
petty.
some games,
Yeah.
but I appreciate it very much. So again, you guys make sure you're following Tej and everybody over at Sumer Sports. You guys will find all the different pieces in our show description here. Make sure you check it out. I think it's like Aaron said, very, very enlightening for a lot of the pieces there, and we'll be using their playoff leverage and MVP odds and some of the different fun things coming up as the season goes.
Okay.
Awesome. Thank you very much, Tej. We appreciate your time.
It, guys. Thanks,
man.
Thanks, man. Oh, all right. So it is fun to be able to have people come on and tell us how fun and how nice our team is. As you did some of your prep for the matchup itself here, were there some things that stood out for you?
I mean, the thing that stood out the most this week for me, Greg, is one, not joking, I watched back that Bills Dolphins game more times than I normally watch back a game. But what is standing out for me is I really was pounding the table on it on the post game show is the way the Bills, both offensive and defensive lines, were able to establish physicality in that game. And I was watching all the Jaguars games this week, getting ready for this, and I looked at those lines versus what they just went up against, and really I just feel real confident that you can go into London and do the same type of thing. If you can continue to do that type of physical football with the weapons that you have with Josh Allen, like that just feels like a tough recipe for all these teams to overcome. The spreads are true, you know what I mean, with these types of games. But yeah, no, I look in the trenches first, and especially along that Jacksonville offensive line is probably the thing that I looked at the most, where the Bills can probably, the way Daquan Jones is playing, the way Ed Oliver, this defensive line unit's playing, I think they can take a lot of advantage, get them into some third and longs, and get some heat on Trevor Lawrence. I think dialing up some blitzes, really putting some pressure on this line to get some pressure on Lawrence. I think that's the recipe. What were you seeing?
So very similar. I think I'm curious how, Cam Robinson's suspension is now up. He's eligible to return. He began practicing. I think he's obviously better than what they've had. He's not like, it's not like you're inserting, a absolute, peak level left tackle, but he's good. He's a good player.
Every little bit
tackle.
Help, right?
Yeah, correct. And they need every little bit that they can get. And I will say, so the same as what actually Tej's data backed up, as I was kind of working on the defensive side of the ball, I was a little surprised, but they actually have some guys playing pretty well. So Josh Allen V2 is having a fantastic season. Already got 6 sacks, 15 pressures. And it's hard to tell how much of that is, I think their front is creating a lot of pressure. They don't do as much rotation on the edge. They play Trayvon Walker and Josh Allen a lot of snaps, but their interior, they rotate a ton. Roy Robertson Harris is having a really nice season. And I think the front is doing more of the work. You have Foye Oluyikan, like their linebackers all over the field all the time. He's having another nice season. And then the secondary, their numbers look good, but I also don't know, if you go back and I ask you to tell me the best receiver on all 4 of these teams combined, they've gone against Indianapolis, Kansas City, Houston, and Atlanta. I don't know what technicians they're shutting down in that stretch. Michael Pittman's had a pretty decent season. I know people like Drake London, but I just don't know what receivers they've gone up against. So when you see some of the numbers and some of the statistics, Darius Williams is having a phenomenal season. He's not giving up much. Tyson Campbell's playing well, but they just haven't gone up against anybody like Stefon Diggs. And, so I think those metrics are accurate. I think they're missing a little context, and I expect them to come a little bit back down to earth as the season goes.
I do as well, and I think DVOA metrics is where I like DVOA as part
Yes.
in
Yes.
in coercion with the type of the EPA and stuff like that, as it compares against where teams are at, and it I think it gives you a good snapshot of where they're at in the moment. And so I think to your point, what you said about the defense is spot on when you look at their DVOA 11th overall, 15th.
Thomas here asked that about that. You use DVOA a lot because it takes it into consideration. EPA, like I said, is kind of a black or white thing. It's just the result of the play versus what was supposed to happen or the likelihood of what every other team would do in that scenario. It does not take the adjustment, the opponent into account.
Opponent adjusted statistic. It just DVOA provides a little another layer. It is not the truth, it's not the fact, but it just gives you a little more context, which matters. And so again, I think it matches up with you. 15th in pass DVOA and 7th in the run. And I think that's DVOA run tends to be line play driven. So I do think you're right that their havoc that they are creating on the defense really starts with Josh Allen. Number one, I think that he is almost unblockable. It's similar level to that what you went up against in the Raiders with the Max Crosby, like that type of. He needs that kind of attention where it's the game plan specifically to stop him from creating havoc. And if those other guys win, good on them. Try good luck catching.
And 2 years ago, he did.
Oh yeah,
2 years ago he was a game wrecker.
Yes, and Brian Dable also wrecked.
Yeah, that horrible 9-6 game where we weren't. We probably came in a little, little big for our britches and overlooked a terribly coached Urban Meyer team and let honestly a player like Josh Allen single-handedly take over that game and allow them to keep them in and to do that. So I actually. We'll talk about this with the predictions and things like that down the line here, but I actually think the fact that that last game was so many similar scenarios, it weirdly was coming off of a win against Miami. We went into that game, we were heavy favorites, and it's specifically against Jacksonville, and the player that ruined the game is still there and playing great now. I actually think it's going to help prevent a lot of the opportunity for a letdown game, a trap game, all those different things, because they were the exact same team that happened to before. And we both know that Sean McDermott's hammering that home every day.
Oh, 100%. I don't think you could put whatever names, faces, and whatever behind that logo, just the logo itself. That's one of the most embarrassing losses in the Sean McDermott era. It's one of the more embarrassing losses in my history of being a Bills fan in terms of like where those two teams were at in their franchise's history and what should have happened. I don't remember what the post-game show was like. I'm pretty confident tonight. Sneak peek onto my predictions here. I'm feeling pretty confident right now, but I'm imagining that I was going into that prediction show too as well. Right. And so, super embarrassing loss. I know that Sean McDermott's a dude of pride, and I know that he uses every little bit of anything to create fake chips, let alone real ones that you have still fresh wounds. There's guys on this roster that experience that loss. It brought into a lot of questions. A lot of names got dragged to be fired after that game. So that's one. You can even see Sean McDermott's already building in the sort of like, hey, we have to travel. It's a real disruption to us, sort of like us versus the world. Like, hey, our backs are against the wall, guys. How are we going to respond? Like, you can just always see in his press conferences the little turning the knobs to just generate a little bit of that going. So it's for sure going to spark the fire and just part of what makes me feel good. But the data is there too. The film is there too. The DVOA is there too. So this isn't just like baseless, like, oh, I'm going to run with Sean McDermott's going to get these guys fired up. That is a part of it, but it should look this way too.
Yeah. So Namdi here is asking the top defensive players. That was my side of the ball. Yeah. We did talk Josh Allen on the front. Josh Allen, and as Pete here said, he doesn't like being called the other Josh Allen. Tough luck. You are the other Josh Allen.
Who was I listening to? I had listened to so much media today, and somebody was trying to make a case for it to be the Jaguars Josh Allen because of what he did in the previous game, that he should be. Oh, it was PFF. It was Monson on PA. Your buddies, Steven.
My best friend.
Yeah, your best friend, Sam. Yeah, those guys. Yeah. These idiots. He said like because of how well he played against Josh and he's whatever, and it was like, dude, like one, what a disrespect to the lack of how hard it is to be a quarterback in the NFL. Yeah. Do it the way Josh Allen does. Like, dude, just stop talking, get out of here. Anyways, continue on.
But so all that aside, the other Josh Allen is phenomenal.
He's so good.
Really, really good. Like he's so you mentioned Max Crosby. I think he's one tier below that.
Sure.
Like, so you have the Bosas, you have the obviously Myles Garrett, TJ Watt. No one's thinking he's on that level. But then you have like the Max Crosbys and prior to his pec injury, like a Matt Judon. And I think Josh Allen was trying to get into that second tier. I think he was there. Daniil Hunter with Minnesota, I think, is in that same ballpark. Probably now where Von Miller is. Von Miller's not probably in that Myles Garrett, TJ Watt class anymore. He's probably now in that group, and I think Josh Allen's trying to get into that group. At defensive tackle, Roy Robertson Harris also is disruptive, but at the front, their best D lineman is Josh Allen. At linebacker, they actually had a guy out of Utah that we liked in the draft, Devin Lloyd. He got hurt. Chad Muma, who is another guy that was of interest, he came in and got roasted. Unfortunately, Chad Muma got put out in open space with Bijan Robinson. That doesn't seem pleasant.
I don't want that for anyone.
Like, that doesn't seem pleasant for anyone. But their actual core linebacker, who used to be with Atlanta, so it was a kind of a homecoming game for him last week, Foye Oluokun, has led the NFL in tackles the last 2 years. He is a crazy sideline to sideline, all over the place linebacker. I think he's more of I'm going to call him more of a London Fletcher kind of linebacker than he's not like a crazy, huge splash play guy, but he's an excellent organizer of the defense, very sound tackler, and is all over the place to make tackles. I don't know that he's always making crazy explosive plays and things like that. They don't blitz him a ton. Yeah. Correct. They kind of keep him in his spot and go there. In the secondary, they actually play around a lot. So Andrew Sisko out of Syracuse, Rayshon Jenkins, they have two pretty good safeties. They do blitz them here or there. And then right now, Darius Williams is playing fantastic. He came from LA and was a free agent signing with them. Tyson Campbell was a draft pick. In their secondary, I guess I would say Andrew Sisko is probably playing the best for their group, but Darius Williams
capitalized on.
Yeah, he's had some good opportunities. Yeah. I said Darius Williams is probably has the best background because he was good with LA and then has been pretty good with them the last.
I think they're playing well as a unit.
Correct. I don't know that they have anyone in the secondary that you're concerned with or nervous from. The guys who can make an impact on this game is Josh Allen and Oluokun. Those are the two that are impactful players. Oluokun's going to be in position all the time. He's going to make James Cook life's difficult because he's athletic enough to stay with him. And then Allen is a guy your comp to Max Crosby is perfect because the way that the rest of their defensive line, we probably are okay going one-on-one. You need a plan for Josh Allen every single play. You have to have a plan of where he is, who's helping. Either, both Dion and Spencer need help with a guy like this. Yeah. You have to have a plan every single play. If we have a plan for Josh Allen, we're good. But that's the best players at each of their three levels for Namdi's question.
Yeah, and I'll just switch over since we didn't do it in the traditional way of a guest here. Just sort of what I looked at in this offense. Obviously, Trevor Lawrence at quarterback. What a weird draft class, Greg. I know you do the sports show. You got to go through that draft class at some point. And somebody needs to go back through the last 5-10 years of QB drafts because nobody knows anything about this. But
we're all idiots.
Yeah, pretty much. But Trevor, he's a tough one for me to really read. I've had to do this a couple times here for Jaguars games in preparation in different parts here of his career. And I just can't get a read on him. He does have all those tools that everybody says. He has the high ceiling plays. You always see it all. Here, what's this comment say? I've got the screen down. What do we got up here? I saw you giggling.
He hates to be the one to break the bad news, but Eric and Ant said they were way better looking than us on the last stream.
I mean, if you have to tell everybody about it, they probably aren't. Anyways, I've had a tough time getting a real read on who he is because I also still see QB sacks that I don't necessarily think are on the offensive line. I still see pressures being able to get to him not really always seeing everything. And so I see opportunities when we're playing Trevor Lawrence here. And part of it is the Jaguars offensive line currently. You talked about getting Cam Robinson back. How is that going to play for them? But this offensive line as a unit overall without Cam Robinson so far is 30th overall in EPA over average. It hasn't looked good on the film. It's been bad. Teams that don't generate pressure get into Trevor Lawrence. I think Cameron Robinson, if he plays in this game, will be an upgrade for them at the offensive line. But the way the Bills' defensive line has looked, I don't really care who you're trotting out there. I think that we can win matchups and get pressure. I mean, Daquan Jones is playing. He's first in overall pass rush productivity according to PFF for all interior defensive linemen. He's 7th overall in the entire NFL when you include linebackers and edge players. Like, this guy's playing at an all-pro level. Ed Oliver's right there. Just the type of rush that they're generating, and then you add in like watching Trevor Lawrence. I don't think he does a good job at picking up pressures and the ability to rush Bernard, to rush Taron Johnson, to rush Matt Milano. I think it can be overwhelming for this offensive line, for this defense. But I like the skill positions. Yeah. I think that's probably the problem for fantasy people. I think it's probably the problem for Vegas, is trying to figure out
the depth of their receiving core is impressive.
Trying to figure out what this Jaguars team can be, because when you look at all the statistics so far in these first 4 games, it leans heavily that this is like a defensive team that maybe should be winning with run first stuff. But when you look at it on paper, they should be spreading people out and scoring tons of points, and you don't really see it translating in. So I don't know what's going on. I do believe that they'll be able to get going here at some point on offense, because to your point, they just have too much depth. So at the running back position, you have Travis Etienne, who I, as a modern day NFL, is part of a committee. I really like this piece. Tank Bigsby, a draft prospect we talked about quite a bit. Also, like, you have tight end Evan Ingram, who the Bills tried to get in here to run that 12 personnel role. We know that they were interested in him. They use him a lot in some of the screen game stuff, just like getting him into space type of player.
He is a crazy athlete for a tight end.
Super athlete. And if he does get going, he can be very productive. Calvin Ridley came out hot there in week 1 and has put up some big productive games. Obviously, Christian Kirk, who's their most productive wide receiver the last couple of years. Kudos, real quick, hats off to Christian Kirk, because he got trashed when that deal came out from the Jaguars.
Yeah,
he probably still is overpaid, but he has been productive for Trevor Lawrence in that offense since he got there, and more productive than all the jerks like me on Twitter were making fun of the Jaguars for him. So anyways, shout out to Christian
Honestly,
Kirk.
Him and Zay Jones, both their contracts got clowned, and they both played better than
Zay Jones. Is another guy in this depth chart that, like, again, like Christian Kirk first before we move on to Zay Jones, it flashes all over the tape. He is a guy that when they need something, get the ball in space. Like, he always is the guy that makes a play for them right now. I think Ridley will also get there over time, which will make them dangerous as the season goes on. But right now, the trust is in Christian Kirk and trying to find ways to get him the ball in space. And he can do some really good stuff with the ball. And he's like one of Josh Allen's best friends. Side note for people that like that stuff. And Zay Jones, Bills fans, man, this is one of those interesting cases of a guy getting drafted, the fans having certain expectations of a player, and development not matching up with where a player's at or where the organization is at. Zay came in a weird time. Tyrod was the QB. There wasn't really a good wide receiver room. He was like forced to be a number 1-2 wide receiver when he isn't, you know what I mean? He's like a 3-4 wide receiver. And maybe the Bills did overdraft him by a little bit.
If he was still here in our 3 or 4, we'd like him.
We'd like him a lot. He has now he got rid of that drops problem. He's a very productive dude. One of the balls, what was the game? I think it was the Kansas City game. One of the balls he caught in the back of the end zone on just like a BS. Trevor Lawrence just threw it up, and he comes down with a great touchdown in the back. He just always is. Even when he was with the Raiders, he just always seemingly wasn't putting up big stats, but made big plays. And yeah, he is just a consistent pro on a depth chart. So good for them. But yeah, no, this offense, it's honestly, it reminds me of some of the teams that they've already played, the Bills, in the Raiders and in sort of the Commanders, in terms of like, yeah, they got guys that can beat you, right? We've gone up against Terry McLaurin and Jahan Dotson. And obviously the Bills don't have Trey right now, but I think the scheme plays out. I think they're going to be able to keep all this stuff in front of them. Here's the thing about the Bills, Greg. I was on Pat's show earlier, and my point that I've come to, if they are playing the way we've seen over the last 3 weeks, which is, I think that is the team they are, you got to put together, your offense needs to be able to put together 4 to 5, 10 to 12 play drives to score against this defense. And that's freaking hard. Like, Kansas City can do it. Like, there's not a lot of teams that I feel like can go march down the field a bunch of times and not score with huge big plays. And I think that's the recipe right now to beat the Bills, because you have to match the 4 or 5 drives that they're probably going to score against your defense. And I don't see in this matchup the Jaguars. They might be able to do it 2-3 times and get some drives on the board, but they're not going to drive on this defense 4 or 5 times like that.
Yeah, I obviously, I mean, similar to my comments for Miami, but not to the degree of the confidence in Miami. We're not going to shut out this team. Like
No.
Jacksonville's going to score some points. To RJ's point here, Travis Etienne's a weapon. He's an explosive athlete. We've given up some explosive plays to a running back every week, every single week. Like it's going to happen. Like it's
Yeah.
just it's how
We're
it
gonna play some
works.
soft zone. There's gonna be running
Yeah.
lanes. Yeah.
And you got, somebody misses a tackle in every football game, and it's going to happen, but it's not going to, it's not going to happen enough times for that to be the trigger for this game, because you have to put that together and you have to capitalize. So on a lot of those, you have to convert that into points. And we brought that up when Tej was on, that some of those big plays that we capped it and then got a turnover, capped it, then got a sack, capped it, and then held them to a field goal. And those things are where the true that is the whole point of this defense, is that we're going to win more often than we lose. You have to capitalize when you do win.
Yeah.
And it's easier to say that than it is to do it.
I agree. Yep.
Should are we ready are we ready to debut our fun new design for this week?
Yeah, here, I'll pull it up while you start.
Yeah. So I feel personally attached to this one because this week, the week 5 of season 5 of the Leftern Game Day series is out now. This week's print is titled Semester Abroad. It was designed by local artist Alex Bertlis. Obviously, just like every single week, 100 stamped and numbered prints get released each week on Instagram and Twitter from Leftern Co. So make sure to give them a follow on both platforms. The website to purchase is www.leftern.co. You'll see that in the show description here. We don't play in London too often, so this is definitely a collector's item. And obviously, I said I was connected to it because I got a chance to do a semester abroad, and I really liked that was the title for this one, and one of my most treasured experiences and memories. And as every single week, individual print sales this season help support Buffalo Cares, a local nonprofit that helps find homes for abandoned and sheltered animals locally. And a really cool design here. So Alex did a great job. I thought this was cool. Touchdown in London Town. Really cool design with the kind of traditional royal crest and having the Jaguar and Buffalo tussling back and forth. I thought it was a really cool design.
Yeah, it's a very fitting piece to the sort of
perfect
theme and brand of a game in London. You know what I mean? Like I always try to line up my food to the game. I'm struggling a little bit this week.
You don't do fish and chips?
Nothing against the Brits. Like I'm sure it's great, but the cuisine,
No,
it ain't that.
You want to know what's really funny? So obviously I work for
Tortilla cooking. Was that where you're gonna go?
Within an international company, and many people from London, from Great Britain, from Ireland, from all around. Right now, the most popular dishes in England are like
chicken wings,
chicken tikka masala. It's Indian.
Food. No,
it's Indian food. Like that's actually the most popular food in
1,000%.
England. Is obviously that long-term tumultuous relationship, and now maybe a little more pleasant relationship. There's obviously a great deal of Indian culture in England, and that's by far the most popular food now, and is taken over for anything, because like tea and crumpets, fish and chips,
there's no flavor in like the traditional. They needed the melting pot of diversity to come in there and spice some stuff up, so I'm glad that happened for them.
So
design of the week here. I want to lead off on design of the week because we talked about having to address Trey White in the post-game show, and that we were going to have to talk about that. And it is the hangover that I really want to avoid, because Greg, you've done this show with me for a long time. How many years did I pick Trey White as the team MVP before Josh Allen came along? It was like 2-3 years where this was my guy. Like I didn't think anybody was more important to the Buffalo Bills than this guy. And so I don't want to downplay the importance of it, but it does change things. And we got to talk about it moving forward here. How does it change? And I think it is a new, fresh look of what's this defense going to look like? How different does Sean McDermott have to dial up some stuff in terms of lacking the athleticism with Trey White? We know Eric has talked about that, what Trey's able to do on a half of the side of the field versus really anyone else that you can plug into that position. So we know from past experience, they've gone through half of a season with Levi Wallace and Dane Jackson. I think Benford and Dane Jackson is probably a slight upgrade in athleticism, but you're still dealing with some limited average cornerback play. But with this new look Sean McDermott defense that is a little bit more aggressive in nature, I'm interested to see how do they play with those two cornerback pieces versus what Leslie Frazier did in the body of work that we saw them do, because they're going to get tested here coming up. Maybe not in this stretch as much. I mean, this coming weekend, there'll be some tests in the wide receiver room, but then the Bills get a little bit of a break coming up here, but then they get tested again deep into the season.
Yeah. Yeah, I think there's, obviously to this point, I'm expecting it to be a pretty standard. We saw Christian Benford was practicing today. He did have a non-contact jersey on, but I know I saw some of the Twitter doctors pointing out he didn't have a harness on. He just had the kinetic tape. That's a pretty good sign that it was not dislocated, that it was maybe either just a bad contusion or an AC joint kind of deal. But usually if it was dislocated and went back in, he'd be wearing a harness, and he wasn't. So I'm going to take that as a positive sign.
Hey.
Obviously, we know the good and the bad of Dane. His floor is very, very high. We've actually seen him making more plays on the ball. I think there was a moment where both you and I thought he was going to be the starter opposite Trey before Christian Benford. So I actually feel pretty good about that.
Yeah.
It's very obvious that the next step will be Kaiir Elam being game day active and being the next outside corner. I expect we haven't seen practice squad elevations to this point needing to be used. I expect to see that this week with Jamarcus Ingram being a game day elevation, either as to make him active or simply to have him available, because you don't want to have the risk of a re-aggravation from Christian Benford. Sure. And then all of a sudden you're caught short and can't make him game day active. So he may get brought up and then is the backup plan in case Benford can't go on game day. And then if Benford's good, then maybe Ingram stays as game day inactive, but you bring him up just in case, because you're going to need that insurance policy to check where it is. And long term, maybe we hear some names of tryouts and some different pieces. A lot of the guys out there were more traditionally nickel guys. You saw Bradley Roby sign with the Eagles. He's a nickel only. A lot of the more playable names are more nickel corners. There isn't a lot of outside corner depth out there. I don't think a lot of teams are looking to move pieces. I guess there's a chance if the Giants keep losing. We did bring Adoree Jackson in for a visit at one point. His contract's not perfect. It would take some negotiation. I expect to play with the guys we have in house. I do not expect. I'm sure that some name of someone will get added to the practice squad, and maybe there's a veteran that gets added to the practice squad. I don't expect some move for a starter to come in. I expect it to be Dane Jackson and Christian Benford, and maybe Kaiir Elam plays his way into some playing time, but I expect it to be that, and that's just the way we're going to see the rest of the season.
Yeah, and it's just, to me, a little bit weird, the conversation about these cornerbacks, the narratives surrounding all of them, that because Kaiir Elam didn't outright win the job, like, he's still a good corner. I think the Bills have 4 starting caliber NFL adequate corners, and I think they believe in those guys. When Benford went down and Dane Jackson came in our group chat, Eric and I were sort of in the same vein of like, yeah, it's not ideal for Christian Benford to go on. I think he's a little bit better than Dane Jackson, but Dane Jackson is the perfect come in and fill the gap cornerback for this defense. He's going to be where he's supposed to be. You saw it on the first drive that he was in. Nate Tice shared the play that Dane Jackson came up on that screen. I think it was Palms coverage, and he came up and did his job on that screen. You just know he's going to be where he's supposed to be on every given play. That's a great thing for coaches. Dane, Benford, they're those kind of ways. And I think Elam's not so totally there yet, and that's why he hasn't earned the trust of coaches to get that game day active, to always be in the spot he's going to be. But he's athletic, and he's proven that he can play good quality cornerback in the NFL. So this is great depth that Brandon Beane's to have those options to where you can bring in a Jamarcus Ingram and that's a break in case of emergency type situation. But we're not even there yet. Like we're so far down the depth chart before Elam is even really playing a lot of snaps. So I think they're in a good spot as of right now. At least I believe in-house they feel like they're in a good spot. So any of the terms of like, hey, they got a trade or they got to get a name in here, I think that they feel confident if they stay healthy, they can roll with these three corners for the rest of the year and match up with everybody.
Yeah, it can both be a downgrade from Trey and not be a death knell for the season at the same time. Like,
right.
yes, it was nice to have a player like Trey White who could make plays above and beyond the scheme, but we have four starting caliber outside corners and a really good scheme to protect them. So the floor was really high. So it can be a shame and a downgrade and not a problem or that big of a deal, which sounds like you're saying losing Trey isn't a big deal, and it is. It's just
yes.
When we had a first round pick who was good enough to play, there wasn't even game day active because we had three guys even better than him. It just happened to be at a spot where we were as deep and as well protected as any other spot that you could have. So it is what it is.
One more quick out before we get at a fresh look. I just want to pat myself on the back because I'm the best that's like one of my best traits is to when I was right about something. I don't know if I said it on this show. I definitely said it on a show. In looking up this matchup against the Dolphins last week, I noticed some trends in tight ends. I looked it up and I was like, man, maybe the Bills should drift. I think I said it in our fresh design of like, we've been going so heavy in the 12 personnel. We should drift away from 12 a little bit in a matchup like this because Miami was playing really well against 12. All the data that we were just saw, all the EPA and stuff, they were playing well. And I said, maybe if the Bills are seeing this trend, will we see a drift towards other personnel groupings? And I don't know if it was because of those trends or we match up perfectly, but we did see them for the first time this year drift heavier back into 11 personnel in this last game. So I'm going to take a pat on the back for that. I saw that. So nobody congratulates me like myself.
I like it. One quick one for my fresh design of the week. I'm curious on Von Miller and how that gets brought back in. I'm expecting it to be week 6. I'm expecting it to be Sunday Night Football against the Giants. I think he saw what Seattle just did to the Giants offensive line, and he wants some of those stat padding sacks too. I don't think we're going to see him this weekend. The one caveat to that is we did see Gregory Rousseau pop up on the injury report this week. He did not practice today with a foot injury, so we need to monitor that. I don't think that is going to be a direct correlation.
Still get by with AJ Epinesa.
With Epinesa, Shaq, Kingsley Jonathan, and Leonard Floyd, we'd be okay. Like those 4 defensive ends.
The way Leonard Floyd's playing,
all 5 defensive tackles, we'd be okay. We'd be okay. I don't like that long term, but we'd be fine for a game. Heck,
even if
we brought Von back and had to put Gregory Rousseau on short term IR for 4 weeks, honestly, if you have to do a really conservative long term thing like that, the next 4 weeks where it's Jacksonville, the Giants, the Patriots, and the Buccaneers, do it right now. Do it right now and just let him get right. I don't know how bad this foot thing is, but he didn't practice today, and that's at least raises a little bit of alarm bells. Put him on the short-term IR right now. Let him get right, and he comes back for Cincinnati.
Yeah, totally fine by me. Yeah. I think you've got the depth right now, and you're in the position of the year to play. Honestly, like I'm in no rush for Vaughn to come back. And when he got hurt a year ago, I never even thought that would be something I would ever say, that I'm not in a rush. At the time, it was like, can Vaughn actually get ready to start the season, right? Like, can he do this miracle recovery? Yeah. And now we're here. The way Leonard Floyd's playing, the way this defensive line's playing, the way the whole defense is playing. I'm not saying they don't need Vaughn. I don't want him back. I don't need to rush it. And even if he comes back, like I'm real happy to slow ramp this right up. Like I really don't need Vaughn to be Vaughn until January to like Christmas time.
Yeah. And I don't want to, I'm going to, contradict myself here, be hypocritical.
We all are, whatever.
So it's hard. Every game matters. I want the first round bye. I want home field advantage. Honestly, each individual regular season game doesn't. We have transcended that phase of fanhood. We used to be in a spot where every single game mattered because we were going to be clawing at the possibility of making the playoffs.
Yeah.
the scenario that we're in now, honestly, if we're the number 1 seed and go there and we lose in the division round, no one's going to care. It's not going to be a successful season.
No.
And if we scratch and claw and have to win multiple road games to make it to the Super Bowl, that's all that's going to matter. So ultimately, all that really matters is having our full complement of talent and being healthy into the playoffs. And whether that's 10-7 as a wild card or 11-6 as a division winner, but a 3 seed, or as a 14-3 number 1 seed with a home field bye, all that matters is being healthy. Because if we're in the playoffs with this full roster, we can beat anyone. So I'm okay every single time any injury concern comes up. I'm okay erring on the side of caution and being conservative and letting them sit.
Yeah. How many years did teams like led by Aaron Rodgers that were 1 seeds or top teams going into the playoffs and come up short? And then I'm pretty sure the year he actually won a Super Bowl, they were a wild card team.
They were.
And just got hot at the end of the season. And so
Get hot and healthy at the right time.
Yeah, I mean, you ask Packer fans which year going in they had the most confidence in. It probably wasn't that wild card year going into it, right? So like, it really is. You got to win out those games. It's hard to do. So there's a lot of ways to get there. But you're right that it is more than ever. We talk about ramping up that time of year. Yeah. Unfortunately, that is the world we live in. Where I don't want to say the next month doesn't matter, but if we saw it in the data that we just saw about the probability, if the Bills slip up in this London trip and they drop another game to the Jaguars,
94% likelihood.
Yeah, nothing really changes, and your expectations shouldn't. Even though you'll freak out and we'll be mad on Twitter, none of it changes.
Yeah. So again, make sure you're checking out all the awesome stuff over at the Leftern Game Day series and the new design here. We love their partnership this year and working with Greg and Melissa and the awesome people over there. It's been a ton of fun.
Yeah, so much fun.
A couple quick questions that we had here in the chat. Fab asked one that we probably take for granted. Who founded Cover One and where did that name get selected? So Aaron mentioned earlier Eric Turner. Eric Turner founded Cover One and then brought on Aaron, and then Aaron actually found me and brought me on. And the three of us are now partners here and help everybody else that you see on the platform as the three of us help run the company that it is now. And the name honestly comes just from the coverage in the defensive Cover One coverage, and it just kind of had a snappy coverage name to it. So it just kind of stuck initially, and now we've kind of gone with it there. But yeah, Eric started up a little over maybe 6 years ago. So we've done quite a bit in these 6 years.
It's got to be more than 6 because my kids.
Maybe 7.
7.
Maybe started at 7.
I think he started. Yeah, I joined about 7 years. I've been doing this show.
Well, I've been here for 6, and I'm all that really matters. So I just
that's right. 6. Yes, yeah. No, it's. I think I've been here for 7. I think he was doing it 8. So we've been around for a little bit. Been a little bit. Block.
A little bit.
Speaking of Eric Turner and all of us here, there's a couple of handsome guys that want to tell you about an opportunity. People ask us, Greg, how can you help? Some handsome guys, more handsome than the guys that you just saw on this YouTube channel, here to tell you about it.
Many people ask us the best way to support us here at Cover One, and that is to sign up to become a Cover One OnePass member. That contribution helps give us the access to all the data and information we use to create the content that you love.
And I think most importantly, brings you into our community of insiders. It's a great community based on Slack. I know a lot of people don't want to be on social media anymore or be in on those conversations. We bring all of it to you right in our great community of educated fans. And most importantly, you get access to our content creators.
Even better than that, everybody loves merch. You get awesome t-shirts, a cool decal, and a letter from the Cover One team signed directly to you.
All for $60. That gets you the entire season, next year's free agency and draft. $60. Click the link in the description. Cover One Insider. Become one today.
They really do a fantastic job.
Very,
very impressive. All right, man. It's time. I went first last time.
Yeah.
And I stole your score. So you get to go first this time and steal my score.
Well, we'll see. This I got to look back at some of the scores I predicted. I'm feeling pretty confident, Greg. I watched back that Miami game a couple of times.
Feeling cocky.
I've said it a few times. I feel good. I watched the Jaguars. They don't scare me. I've seen the data. The data tells me I might not be too far off here. So I do think because of the travel, because of the time, because of the field, not being used to playing a game in London, it might take a minute for the Bills to get going. I don't know that we see the train just come out and blow them out of the water here. So maybe it's settling for some field goals early, and maybe even Jacksonville has a little bit of a lead early in this game. And it's just like, ugh, this feels uncomfortable. It's the morning. Why am I watching football at 9 a.m.? What is going on? But I think by the time this game settles in, and I keep saying it about this Buffalo Bills team and the roster Brandon Beane has assembled, I think they're suffocating in the same way boa constrictors are for a 4-quarter game. I just don't think that teams that aren't built the same way with the roster and how physical the lines have been able to be, I don't think you can keep up for a 4-quarter game. So I think over the talent just starts to pull away as the game goes on. I've got this one finishing 31-17 in favor of the Buffalo Bills here. And so, yeah, actually, no, 30-17. So I've got it
30-17.
30-17 here. And I'm hoping you're pretty close in that gap. I got a pretty big gap here for me picking.
We're very, very close. And we've got a couple other ones popping in here. So Bills Witch also had 31-17.
Okay.
So I like it. David here 38-23. Mike had 28-13.
Okay, everybody's we're all vibing, man.
Yeah. I'm real close to Brian. I got 31-20.
Okay. So we're
31-20. I think that it's just like you said. I expect them. We're not going to shut them out. They're going to score 2, 3, 4 times, but I think a couple of them are field goals, and I do think we wear them down. There's a couple interesting things with this matchup. I think it's a little annoying that this counts as a home game for
I'm
us.
so annoyed by it.
But they're the team that's there waiting for us to travel in and arrive. Like, okay, I get it. Everybody has to give up a home game when you go travel overseas, and it is what it is. But how does this not count as a Jacksonville home game? Like, they're already there. They're the team that plays in London all the time. They got to stay there, and we are traveling over to them, and it's one of our home games. So whatever. I'm just complaining randomly.
No, don't. You can play as much as you want about this London stuff. Honestly, I'm happy for people that get to travel and make an experience about London. I'm not trying to take anything away from people that enjoy that stuff, but I absolutely hate international football. So rant as much as you would like about it.
Shout out here to Chris or to Keith here, one of our like genuinely original Slack members and one of our longest compadres and friends and supporters. And mostly a shitster on Slack. But other than that, pretty enjoyable fellow.
Yeah.
And I'm going to add a little bit there. So some people, my complaint about them over there waiting for us, people are taking that as an advantage for Jacksonville. But I'm not actually discrediting that because I think there is something to body clock. I think there's actually been some recent science that shows not leaning into it and trying to regulate your body and just going over there and staying on your own schedule, finishing the game and coming home is almost is the same value. And I want to add, for my professional life, I have to travel a fair amount, and a fair amount of that is international travel. I can tell you, when you're gone from your home routine, your own bed, your own food, living out of a suitcase and in a hotel for 2 weeks, that second week, these are very highly tuned professional machines.
Like us.
Like, they're almost identical to you and I. Like the recovery equipment that they normally have access to, all the same workout equipment and things. And I know they probably do a very good job with the food that they have, but it's also different. And I just think that it probably maybe negates a little bit of that body clock advantage, that there's an awful lot of those guys that when they pack up from that hotel are ready to come home, ready to be
the good news for them though is that they don't have to be in Duval County.
Yeah, they don't have to be in Jacksonville, Florida, because London probably is much nicer than that. So we'll see. I'm curious. This is an experiment. We are literally in an experiment. The NFL is curious how this is going to work. It's the first time a team has ever stayed overseas for back-to-back games. We'll see. I think that we're
going to plow through them like a train.
I don't.
I really feel that way. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe the data will come back good for them, but
yeah, we'll see. We'll see. There's a chance they have talent. Trevor Lawrence is a talented player. Calvin Ridley's a talented player. Josh Allen, the other Josh Allen, is a talented player. I think that we're going to win this game. I think that we're going to win this game, and I think we're going to take care of it comfortably and keep rolling
that
along
means
the way.
You and I are going to join these fine people in the afternoon for some tea and biscuit.
Yeah.
Maybe.
So obviously, continue to check out all the fun things we have going on at Cover One. We will very likely have a fun football and friends Friday with you and Chris on Spaces. We will have our friend Joe DeRosa on Under Review on Saturday. We might have a pregame show. I'm really curious if Steve Mathis is gonna be up at 5 a.m. or 4:30
maybe a pre-recorded
a.m.
pregame show.
Yeah, maybe. God bless him if he
Right.
does. If he lives in Phoenix and that's like legitimately
That's up pretty early.
like 9 hours ahead.
Although last
of
weekend I was
London
up.
time.
I was up for Ryder Cup pretty early. Watching some Ryder. I wouldn't have been broadcasting a pregame show, but
I was gonna say, yeah, there's a little bit of a difference there, but
Yeah.
God bless him if he does. We might have a pregame show from the air raid hour, and then Aaron and I will be with you probably like 12:45. So we'll be able to get in there and not take away more than maybe a quarter of those first 1:00 games from you guys once we get rolling there. But looking forward to having a lot of fun with everything going on there. And make sure you check out, we'll also have college football red zone on playback Saturday night. So having some fun there, going through all the different games as we see our first college football red zone. And I actually saw ESPN's trying out like a red zone version of hockey. So all kinds of fun things coming up here.
I don't know. Part of red zone that makes it so good is the host, right? Like, I don't know.
Scott Hansen's awesome.
Scott Hansen's real good at what he does. And so I hope that it goes well for it because red zone's awesome. I love that experience. It's the only reason why I'm okay with this game getting out of the way is because I know I'm going to get to go watch red zone, and that's nice.
So I didn't bring it up. I sent that tweet.
There's a lot of red zone coming up.
That we only have one 1:00 game over the next 12 weeks, which sucks. The good part is it means we have like 11 weeks of red zone in the next 12 weeks. It's actually kind of cool.
For sure. Actually, real quick, because we got to wrap this up. But my wife low key hates when I'm just watching on a red zone. She's like, it's just like too overwhelming, consistent play. I'm like, yes.
It's really funny. I take for granted that like sickos like you and I can just process it and like we know exactly what's happening, and when it switches over to the other game, our brains just switch over. Because when my daughter and when I put it on the main TV in our living room, they're like, wait, what's going on? I don't know what's going on. What is this game? And I'm like, what do you mean? They just switch over to the other game. They're about to score, and I'm just sitting there like completely like manic, crazy, drugged out on football, and I'm like, oh yeah, I forgot everybody's brain isn't just completely wired to football like this. But yeah,
it's nice. It's good living.
All right, guys, the chat was awesome tonight. You guys were fantastic. You guys know how this works. Help us out. Press the like button on your way out. Give us a like, give us a rating, give us a review. All those good things that work on the internet nowadays. But
you're right there. On behalf of Greg Tompsett, I'm Aaron Quinn. You've been listening to the Cover One Buffalo podcast, and we are